Think about nowadays how you consume the things that you buy. Okay, you go onto Amazon, you go to various different retailers online. Maybe you go to the mall. It's pretty rare these days. Otherwise, though, it was in this era of American history that you started to see the rise of a middle class that would really spurn the idea of there being a consumer economy. People nowadays, even though you did have income growth disparities, you did start to see an emerging middle class of people who had a few more bucks in their pocket. So they may not be super wealthy, but they've got a few extra bucks to maybe enjoy themselves a little bit. They may want to buy things. It was around this time that after the post Civil War era, which spurned the need for ready made uniforms for Union and Confederate troops, um, you had the idea of ready made clothing materials. Prior to this era, most Americans had made their clothes themselves, or they had them made by a special clothier or something like that. Nowadays, because of sewing machines that you can crank your foot and it spins the machine, the availability of cloth and all kinds of different things available, now you can have a new form of consumerism to where you can buy clothes. This shirt that I'm wearing is an Eddie Bauer shirt. I actually bought it online. I went to eddiebauer.com. This is great. This shirt's awesome. It's very flexible. It's very comfortable. It moves with you. Oh my gosh, this is great. I don't feel any strain. I can reach here and it just moves with you, and it's sturdy and it's kind of dry fitty. It's like, all right, good job, Eddie Bauer. Nice. Okay, there had to be an idea as to where you can get stuff like that. Okay, so hold that thought. But otherwise, though, if you wanted to buy things, you now may have a few extra bucks to be able to do so. And there were now technologies that would enable you to now do those various sorts of things. Other technologies also meant that we would consume food differently. I mentioned a little bit ago about food being transported on trains. Primitive ice boxes were developed around this time to where, okay, you have ice and even simulated ice that can now be stored and put in various different boxes where you can put leftover food and keep it for a while. The precursor to the modern refrigerator came out about this time. Thank you, America. Ah. So, with that in mind, we are now going to improve our diets because food is going to stay fresher for longer and we can store it for longer because we were able to cool it. And if you've ever heard people refer to a refrigerator as an icebox, go to the icebox and get me a beer or something like that. That's an old term, a precursor to the modern day refrigerator. Okay, you literally put ice in a box and it would stay frozen for a certain amount of time, and you put food in there and it would keep things cooled, keep it fresher for longer. You can enjoy it for longer. Okay. People's livelihoods and their diets would now improve because of that. You would now have a longer standard of living and a longer lifespan and a little bit healthier diet, which would improve people's livelihoods. America. Good job. Okay. A few other things happened at this time. I mentioned like Amazon, going on eBay or places like that and buying stuff, or maybe your favorite place to buy your Jordans or wherever else. Okay. I remember when I was a kid, there used to be the Sears catalog that would come out every year. And the Sears catalog would be about this thick. And you thumb through it, and there's the women's section, and this, and there's the boys section. Here's the toy section. I'm going to go right to that and see what they've got. Oh, they got all the Transformers I want. Oh, that's awesome. G.I. Joes and Mask, and oh, this is He-Man. Oh, this is fantastic. This is great. Love it. I am an 80s kid after all. Otherwise, though, within this catalog, you can now see all sorts of pre-made goods. clothes, um, household items, tools, appliances that are now primitively coming out. You can buy a telephone in this thing. These mail order catalogs came out about this time as a part of the overall larger consumer network that would become department stores. So the advent of department stores, like today you've got Macy's and Dillard's, um, department stores have really taken a hit, not just in the coronavirus era, but really the last 15 years since the advent of the internet, with fewer and fewer brick and mortar stores staying open. More people are consuming stuff online. It's hard for a true department store to stay open. There's still a need for them, just not as many. But the idea of a department store would be kind of a one-stop shop. You have a large store where you have, oh, there's the boys' clothes right next to the girls' clothes. Here's the shoes. Here's women's this. Here's young women's. Here's this women's. There's that women's. There's the perfume. And then there's that women's. And then the purses. And oh, there's the men's section right there, the men's shoes. There used to be toy sections when I was a kid. I'd go to Foley's, and there'd be a toy section, and I'd go see all my Matchbox cars or all the latest toys I wanted, all the Legos and all that kind of stuff. Okay, I'd camp out there. Some of them used to have like electronics. Oh, you can get a stereo over here, surround sound. Oh my gosh. Oh, it's a dual? You mean you have dual cassette? You can record from one to the other, and it has a CD player on top with surround sound? No way. Yeah, nowadays you've got one thing that does a million things, but whatever. Um, Otherwise, though, now you have housewares. You have the idea of a store that you don't have to leave to get pretty much anything you wanted outside of groceries. And even now, you go to Walmart and they've got an electronics section right next to all the groceries where you can get fruit and your frozen yogurt and your waffles and a TV and a 6-pack of beer and yarn and a birthday card and a fake diamond ring and like a Casio watch and a pair of cheap Wranglers and like a thing of sirloin steak. You can get a sirloin steak right next to like your cashews, and my batteries are here, and I can buy CDs and DVDs. I can buy a Roku here after I just got my fuel filter. Wow. These things have everything, okay? But the idea at the time was that you would have a department store that would be your one-stop shop. You'd really never have to leave it. Sears used to be Sears and Roebuck. Sears is in a world of hurt today. I don't think Sears is long. When I was a kid, Sears was still a very strong retail entity. But the internet era has really changed Sears. And Sears, one of the best things they're known for are their craftsman tools. And hopefully those live long because those are very good. But Sears used to be a little bit more of like a blue-collar type place where you can get tools, your Dickies, your non-super elegant things that just help regular folks get by. And then you have your upscale places like your Neiman Marcus or your Nordstroms, where you can get the high label stuff and all kinds of goodies. Okay, be kind of a status symbol. Oh, you went to Neiman Marcus. Oh boy. Okay. Otherwise, though, you had your mid-level ones like Dillard's, Foley's. J.C. Penney used to come out with a catalog just like Sears did, and it'd be targeted a little bit differently. They did away with their catalog a few years ago. J.C. Penney's also struggled in the internet era as well, but otherwise, though, that was kind of the thing. Back then, you used to have dry goods stores like Woolworths. I remember the mall we used to shop at in McAllen, Texas, when I was a kid. They had a Woolworths, and it was different than others. This is more of like a bargain bazaar almost. But otherwise, though, Sears, in the advent of your modern department stores really became larger at this time. And it wouldn't be long until these sorts of retail department stores made their way to downtown urban areas. I remember I went to Spain a few years ago, and right in Sol, which is right downtown in um, Madrid, they have their most renowned department store called El Corte Inglés. Okay, it's like a five-story department store where like the first story is you got women's clothing, second story is like women's shoes, third story is like housewares, and in fourth story you got like children's clothes, and fifth story is men. This, it's like wow, this is amazing. This is pretty interesting. Um, and so I remember seeing that, and it's like this is old timey. This is part of an urban environment. Well, that's where it got its advent in places like New York City and Chicago, where you had downtown department stores. Um, and oftentimes, these department stores would particularly target women. Not in a bad way, but they realized, hey, we can have appeal to women in certain areas. Women's clothing often changes. Okay, let's capture that and let's market to women. Let's also maybe provide retail opportunities for women to work. Who better to sell women's clothes than a woman who looks great in women's clothes, saying that other women could look just as great? Kind of makes sense. So you started to see a lot of women begin to work in various different retail operations that could move that mindset forward. And because of which you had advocates who recognize that women have a viable place in our consumer society. And so you have the National Consumers League that was inaugurated around this time to help women advance themselves in the consumer market. So it was the rising wages, an emerging middle class, and the advent of the department store that often changed the way we consumed our goods.